Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Hope you're doing well. I wanted to come on today and do a little short tutorial of monorooting. And for those of you that are not familiar with monorooting is rooting one hair per hair follicle. Or in other words, one hair per punch into your vinyl head. A lot of people consider micro rooting to be one hair per hole, but it's in fact not. It has to be one hair per hole to be considered mono rooting. Micro rooting is 2 to 7 hairs per hole. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it is. So for this tutorial, I have went ahead and mapped off my head. I hope that you can see this okay. These little marks here I have drawn with my Prisma pencil. I have the swirl mapped out as well, if you can see that. And my overall style for this doll is pretty much just straight down in the front. She has a little swoop here of hair, and then of course she's directionally rooted down along the sides. And what you want to keep in mind when you're doing your rooting is your directions to get the utmost realistic effect, okay? And I'm just going to show you here how I monoroot. I'm going to start by pulling out some hairs out of the tuft. And then I'm going to take and punch in one hair. Okay. Make sure you keep your needle at an angle. And then of course, if you get more than one hair per hole, you can always either pull it out or use your tweezers to pull it out. And I always start from the bottom and work my way up so that I'm not having to move hair all over the place while I'm doing my rooting here. It's kind of odd to root at this angle with the camera here. Now, personally, if I get when I'm rooting my doll's heads, if I get 2 hairs per hole, it does not bother me because I do not advertise my babies as being mono-rooted. And that's because I'm always afraid I'm going to get a couple of extra hairs in a hole and not notice or whatever, and I don't want to be dishonest in my listings. So I always just advertise my doll's hair as being micro rooted. But I'll tell you guys, when you're making your dolls and selling them, rooting is very important. You can have the best paint job ever seen, and if you have very bad rooting, that will take away from the overall look and realism of the doll. And what that does is it ends up cutting into your profits. And of course everybody wants, to do good work and, have a good reputation in reborning. especially in a market that is so competitive right now. And another thing that's very important is photography. And I know it shouldn't be, but unfortunately it is. It's the only thing that potential clients have to see your work. And if your doll is one of the most beautiful things in the world and you're unable to get that to come through in your photos, then no one's going to know it but you, unfortunately, until they purchase the doll and get it home and see for themselves. But in the meantime, you may get a much lower price than the quality of your work is worth. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a few more hairs here. And just so you know, I am using a 46G needle. And this needle is extremely tiny. But, you can use, I would recommend nothing lower than a 42. 42 is usually what works out well for most people. And I do use 42 here and there, but I've kind of drifted more over to 46G, especially when you're using Delta Dawn hair or a comparable hair and fine texture. You're going to have something much smaller to get that to get the vinyl to grip it and not have it come out. So what you also want to make sure when you're rooting is you want to make sure of what I refer to as your hair depth or needle depth, and that's how far your needle is pushing the hair into the vinyl. You want to make sure that that's going in enough that you're going to be able to properly seal it and that it's not going to fall right back out. Okay. So I don't know if you've if you can see on the video. I'm hoping that you can, but when I go to push the hair in, how I'm angling it, and that's going to allow the hair to lay down instead of stick up. Okay. And yes, you can put the hair down with water, but what's going to happen is you're going to have like a little bump right here where the hair's rooted straight down. So it'll be bumped up right there in the hair. So you'll have this laying down and there'll be a little bump right there. And it just doesn't look very good. And then I usually take just some plain water and spritz it down as I go. And I always work with a heated head. So I'll heat my head and let it lay on this side I'm going to be rooting to get real nice and warm. And then when it gets real good and warm, I'll go ahead and start my rooting. This is a really thick hair, so I'm going to go ahead and eliminate that. I don't like the real thick hairs, and you'll find them in your tuft at times. They're real, I don't know, thick and kinky hairs that sometimes gets in your mohair. And what I like to do, guys, when I'm rooting my hair is I like to go in rows and then stagger those rows so that when you brush it all down straight, you don't have any noticeable gaps. And mono rooting is very time consuming, which rooting to anyway is time consuming, but you do have to have patience. You really do. And to get the best rooting depth, to make sure it's getting in good and you're going to have a good amount to seal, I come out about right here. That way I've got a good amount of hair inside of the head for me to root in. And as you get used to it, you'll pick up speed, and I can usually go a little bit quicker than this, but I've got the camera right here between my arm and the head, and so it's a little bit awkward for me right now. But it does take me quite some time to root a head. And of course, I'm not the best rooter. There's so many other artists I see that's hair is just so gorgeous, and they're such good, they're such good artists, and they're really good at rooting and everything. And I've had a lot of trial and error over the years, more error than most, I'd say, and so I've used probably every type of mohair available in the U.S. and every type of needle to actually get what works for me. And what works for me may not work for you, but I can offer you advice based upon what I've experienced, and hope that helps you and cuts out some time for you. And this right here looks like another one of those thick hairs. And guys, that's basically all there is to it. It's just making sure you're getting one hair per hole, keeping it in a direction that looks natural, and making sure you're turning your hand and your head as needed. And you may need to map your head out. And like I said, I did this one for demonstration purposes, just to try to help give you an idea of which way I go, but normally I don't map my head out. I just don't like marking on my dolls. I feel like it messes my paint jobs up, which I know it doesn't, but I don't know, it's some weird knack I have. But I've done videos before on there's another thick hair. I've done rooting videos before with micro rooting, and I just thought I would show you guys how I mono root. And this is how I try to do with all my dolls, even if I advertise them as micro rooted. Like I said before, just I don't want to be held to that, just in case. And also, you want to make sure you try to keep the same amount of space. Be aware of how much space you're putting in between each hair. And when I'm done, I usually go back and just, you know, brush my hair in the direction I'm wanting it to go, and look for any gaps. Maybe a hair may have come out, or a couple of hairs may have come out, and then I just go back and pretty much recheck my work just to make sure that everything is still how it should be. And then once I check it over, I then go to sealing and cutting and styling. And this is just the best way I've found to do it. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's the way you should do it. But it's the best way for me. And these marks here, since they are a Prisma pencil, they will rub off. And then I usually I'll check my toothbrush and make sure that I don't have a bunch of hair here. If you do, you know that your hair's not going in deep enough, or the vinyl's not holding it tight enough. And then you'll of course need to make adjustments, because you don't want to root an entire head and then have to go back and redo it. Trust me, I've been there, done that. Alright guys, I know this wasn't a terribly long video, but I just wanted, you know, like I said, just to come on and give you an idea of how I monoroot, and just try to, you know, give you some ideas if you need them for doing your own monorooting. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to post a comment down below, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.